Thieves hijack a subway train, so to save the hostages, the city needs someone with extensive knowledge of the New York transit system. But the question remains, once the hijackers get their money, how can they possibly escape? Four men, Ryder, Bashkin, Emery, and former train operator Phil Ramos, are at the New York City subway station on 77th Street. The men seem to be waiting for the Subway 6 train called Pelham 123. They're all keen to not attract suspicion and silently board the train, each standing at a separate spot. Soon the train starts moving and the men wait patiently for a signal from Ryder, who is their leader. At 1:51 p.m., Ryder goes to the motorman Jerry's compartment. Jerry rolls down his window to ask Ryder to move, but the latter removes his gun and points it on Jerry's head. He orders Jerry to open the door. He then knocks out Jerry, allowing Phil to take control of the train. Ryder and the rest of the men sit patiently, waiting to make the next move. When it's go time, Phil orders Jerry to give him the cutting key. The men congregate in the train's first car and wait for the opportune time to strike. After a few minutes, Phil uncouples the front car from the rest of the train. Meanwhile, Metropolitan Transportation Authority employee Walter monitors the trains in front of computers. He's surprised when Pelham 123 seems to have stopped despite the rail being clear. He calls Jerry but can't get any answer. This causes him to get suspicious that something is wrong. Bashkin and Phil are on the other train and they quickly take the passengers hostage. A New York City police officer approaches the train wanting to know what's happening. His presence makes Bashkin panic and he shoots the officer dead. This makes the other passengers start screaming, so Bashkin has to fire his weapon several times to get everyone to settle down. Phil calls Ryder to report the situation. He's worried that Bashkin might go off the rails and lead to the hijackers' doom. Realizing the depth of the situation, Ryder orders the train's conductor to direct the hostages to safety while Bashkin and Phil join him on the front train. Once everything is secure and the team is ready to go, Ryder finally answers the phone. Walter realizes that he's not speaking with Jerry, so he asks Ryder what he wants. Ryder first has Jerry confirm that he and several passengers have been taken hostage. Ryder then asks Walter if he has a calculator. He gives him the exact amount a kidnapped person is worth and multiplies it by the hostages he has. In the end, Ryder demands $10 million to be delivered in 60 minutes. He warns that he'll eliminate a hostage for each minute his money is delayed. Walter explains that he's the wrong man to be negotiating with, but Ryder is adamant. Walter informs the others of the current situation and tries calling the mayor to get the ransom. Walter then calls Ryder, telling him that the mayor has been informed of everything and is in the process of getting the funds. In the train, Emery is working hard to ensure that the train gets internet connectivity. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Caminetti of the NYPD Emergency Service Unit walks into the rail control center and is updated on what's happening. He wants to speak with Ryder, so Walter informs him what to do and which button to press. Walter is given the rest of the day off by his supervisor as he's dealt with a stressful situation. Caminetti starts speaking to Ryder, asking him what he wants. Ryder asks for Walter, but he's angry to hear that Walter is not in the control room as he's not in the case anymore. Ryder kills Jerry and tells Caminetti that he has 60 seconds to bring Walter back or else another hostage will die. Caminetti and his men quickly find Walter, who is still at the station. Ryder tells Walter that he has 39 minutes before he starts killing the hostages one by one if his money doesn't arrive by then. Suddenly, Caminetti learns that Walter is being investigated for accepting a bribe from a Japanese company. This makes Caminetti wary of Walter, but they cannot do anything to him now, seeing that Ryder will only speak to him. At the train, Emery manages to get the train internet access, and Ryder watches how Dow Jones Industrial shares plunge dramatically due to the hijacking. Luckily, another hostage on the train gets internet access that allows him to continue Skyping his girlfriend. He discreetly tells her to post the live webcam on a popular social media site. This allows Caminetti and his team to keep track of Ryder and his men. Similarly, Ryder finds out about Walter's alleged accusations. He calls Walter and starts asking him questions regarding the bribe. Walter explains that he's still under investigation, so he hasn't been found guilty. He also maintains that he's innocent of all the charges. However, Ryder starts taunting him, forcing him to confess to taking the bribe or he'll eliminate another hostage. This forces Walter to explain what had happened, allegedly. He'd been approached by two companies who wanted his help in winning over a supply contract. He'd taken a bribe from one of the companies to give a glowing recommendation. Ryder asks him how he'd spent the money, and Walter says he'd used the money to pay for his children's college tuition. Walter says that he would have made the same decision regardless. This answer pleases Ryder and he spares the hostage's life. 21 minutes before the deadline, the mayor is under a lot of pressure, so he agrees to truthfully give the ransom money. The money is parked in a police car and hurried over to the drop point. However, the car gets into an accident that causes the delivery to be delayed by a few minutes. Walter is worried about what Ryder will do if he finds out the money has been delayed. He speaks to him saying the money is en route, but Ryder already knows about the accident as he too has been monitoring the streets and knows about the accident. Walter tries to distract Ryder by asking him about Phil, but it doesn't work. Suddenly, the mayor's aide informs everyone about the plummeting stocks, making the team realize that this had been Ryder's plan all along. Ryder asks about the money and Walter says that it's almost there. Angry at being deceived, Walter threatens to kill a child's mother. However, a former soldier sacrifices himself on her behalf and he's killed. Coincidentally, an emergency services unit sniper watching the train is bitten by a rat. This startles him and he releases the trigger, causing the weapon to kill Phil. The action leads to a slaughter as Ryder executes several hostages as payback for Phil's life. Caminetti is determined to know who the kidnappers are, so he has his men start digging into Phil and why he was fired. It's revealed that Phil had been arrested and sentenced for manslaughter. Ryder calls Walter with new terms. He says that he wants Walter to deliver the money himself and has 7 minutes to do so. Caminetti teaches Walter a few survival moves before handing him the money. He has another police officer escort Walter to Pelham 123 while he talks with Ryder. The police officer gives Walter a weapon to defend himself should he need to be and teaches him how to pull the trigger. Suddenly, a police officer enters the control room with information about Ryder. His real name is Dennis Ford and he'd been arrested for investment fraud. The mayor remembers the case since Ryder had taken a plea bargain for 3 years but ended up doing 10 years instead. He'd been released from prison 2 weeks ago and stayed on the same cell block as Phil. Walter gets to the train and delivers the money to Ryder. Ryder asks him if he knows how to drive a train. When Walter confirms that he does, Ryder orders him to get inside the train and start operating it and warns Caminetti to ensure the rails are clear. However, once they get to 33rd Street, Ryder and his accomplices exit the train. He orders Walter to rig the train to continue on self-drive and takes him hostage. He wants Walter to show them the easiest route out of the subway. However, Walter takes advantage of an oncoming train to separate himself from the men. He tries calling for help, but the phones down there don't work. Ryder and his men split the cash and each go their separate way. However, Emery and Bashkin find themselves surrounded by police officers. They remove their weapons and start firing at the police officers, causing their suicide by cop deaths. Ryder exits the tunnels and boards a taxi, but he's spotted by Walter. Walter follows the taxi on foot and then steals a car to keep chasing Ryder. Meanwhile, the train stops just before Coney Island and the passengers are safe. The police soon discover that Ryder is not on the train. Ryder realizes that his kidnapping scheme has earned him over $300 million. As he's celebrating his victory, Walter calls Caminetti to let him know that Ryder is headed towards the Manhattan Bridge. Ryder spots several police cars and he exits the taxi. After a fierce chase, Walter catches up with Ryder at the pedestrian walkway. He holds him at gunpoint and motions for the police officers to come over and arrest him. However, Ryder says that he's not going back to prison. He gives Walter 10 seconds to shoot him, or else Ryder will shoot Walter and cause the police officers to kill him. Walter refuses to kill Ryder, but when the hijacker reaches for his weapon, Walter has no option but to fire. As Ryder dies, he tells Walter that he is his hero. Walter drops the weapon and looks at Caminetti in the helicopter. Caminetti gives him a nod of approval. Later, the mayor personally thanks Walter for his service and offers to turn a blind eye to the bribery case. Walter goes home to his wife, carrying the groceries she'd asked him to get.